Good evening, metalheads, and welcome to another edition of Metal Sanctuary. And this episode, we're going to talk about the top 5 metal EPs. Now, for those of you who may not understand what an EP is, go back to the earlier days of recording music. You had vinyl, which started out as singles, where you would have what was considered a hit by the band, and then there would be what was called the B-side, which is another song on the back. And then you had what was called the EP, which was an extended play, somewhere between maybe 3, 4, 5 songs on there before the complete full LP, which would stand for longer play, I'm assuming anyway. I know the EP stands for extended play. So anyway, I do have an honorable mention for the top 5 EPs. I actually rearranged this earlier because I was looking for an honorable mention and I came across one I forgot about. So one of my ones that was in the top 5 got kicked out, and so I actually have 2 honorable mentions for this. The first one is Slayer's Haunting the Chapel, which came out in 1984. This was a year after their debut, Show No Mercy, and right before Hell Awaits, which is my personal favorite Slayer album. You've got Haunting the Chapel, Captor of Sin. I think Aggressive Perfector was the bonus song that was added later. So it was originally like a 3-song EP, eventually became 4. It's probably one of the lower ends of the early Slayer category just for me. I think really if it was added to Hell Awaits, that would probably have made just like this combination great record, because there's still a lot of the Show No Mercy sound in it with maybe especially like with a song like Captor of Sin probably had more of like the Hell Awaits maybe vibe or lyric vibe or whatever. Also for me, Creator's Flag of Hate, which was I think 87, and this had, you know, the title track Flag of Hate also had I can't even read my own handwriting here. Awakening of the Gods and Take Their Lives also on that record. Creator, one of my favorite European thrash metal bands. Very dirty sound. Kind of sounds like a thrash version of Motorhead, kind of. Them and Sodom and Destruction. The German thrash scene really sounded that way. Also, you know, especially Sodom and Creator, I think, gave more of like the influence with the guttural, almost kind of guttural style vocals that would kind of bleed into the early death metal scene. So those are my 2 honorable mentions, and let's go ahead into the top 5. Number 5 for me, it's got to be Cathedral's Soul Sacrifice, 1992. One of my favorite doom metal bands, you know, the early doom metal bands like Cathedral and Saint Vitus and Pentagram. Lee Dorian, who started with Napalm Death and then came over to Cathedral. I think his vocals with Cathedral, just in my opinion, are the better Cathedral years. There were, I think, 3 songs on that record, including the title track. At number 4 for me, Possessed, Eyes of Horror. This came out right after the first 2 records, which were Seven Churches and Beyond the Gates. Possessed, starting off with their first record, they were a kind of one of the early waves of American death metal, along with Death at the same time. A lot of people can argue which one was the first or whatever, but really after Seven Churches, they got more of like a thrashier sound with Beyond the Gates, and Eyes of Horror was kind of really within that realm. I think there's like about 5 songs on that record. Number 3, Torture Tactics, Violence. You've got Dicks of Death, Gutter Slut, Torture Tactics, and then the original version has a live song of one of their earlier records. I don't remember the song right offhand. That one comes out in 1991. A band that eventually would split up. And And most of you would know that guitarist Rob Flynn was in that band, one of the multiple Barry or thrash bands. He was originally in that band and would eventually form Machine Head. So Torture Tactics, I actually listened to that one, was either a week or 2 weeks ago. I had forgotten all about it, and when I listened to it, I think that's the original reason I ended up doing this list. I've actually had this list comprised for probably about that same amount of time. I want to say like a week, maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember, getting up there in the age. So that leads us to our top 2, and these are 2 of just my favorite things to listen to, whether it's an EP or a full-length album. 2 of my all-time favorite bands. Number 2, the first studio release for the Danish metal band Merciful Fate. I got into them actually originally by hearing the Metallica Merciful Fate medley, and which they did on the first disc of Garage Inc., which was I think 1998. And I was just listening to it, and I was like, if Metallica would play like this again, and I was like, okay, I gotta find out who this Merciful Fate band is. And I checked them out. I think I had the first album I bought was actually now their last album, which came out in 1999, and I got it the year it came out, the album 9. And then backtrack through the rest of their discography and find King Diamond solo, blah blah blah. Anyway, 1982. This is a couple years after Venom puts out their first record, which I believe the first one was Welcome to Hell. And they kind of pick up where Venom left off with the shock and kind of evil and occult type stuff, but really did a whole different number on it. Instead of having kind of the growly, raspy voice that Kronos has in Venom, you've got King Diamond with the falsettos, and Diener and Sherman, the excellent dual guitar work. Nuns Have No Fun, Corpse Without a Soul, Doomed by a Living Dead. I think if they had added that to their actual first full-length studio album, which was Melissa, I think that would have been probably one of the most perfect metal albums, like a real complete full album. So there we go at number 2. Number 1, also an original studio release for a band, coming out in 1983 from Seattle, I think, or somewhere around that area. Progressive metal band Queensryche comes out with their self-titled EP, and this had songs like Queen of the Reich, Lady Wore Black. Just a fantastic EP to start what I believe is one of my favorite metal bands, really up to the Empire record. After that, they did delve into some things I really wasn't quite into, a song or two here or there. But with Jeff Tate and company, those guys, DeGarmo and Wilton, the guitar duo there. Tate's vocals, one of my favorite metal vocalists out there. I think that has to be the best metal EP out there, especially if you're talking about like the classic metal. I mean, in this list, I've got some doom, I got some death, and some thrash, and some whatever you want to consider Merciful Fate. They've been put in like 8,000 different categories. But just for me, I think that's probably the best metal EP in my opinion. As always, love to hear your read your comments. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. Stay metal, and God bless.